Aloha!
Polynesian Pro Wrestling. High Chief Peter Maivia present Championship Wrestling. Oh, yeah.
Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling, also known as Polynesian Pacific Championship Wrestling, was a promotion located in Hawaii that ran shows from 1979 to 1988 and was a member of the National Wrestling Alliance for its entire existence. It was formed in 1979 when High Chief Peter Maivia purchased what was left of 50th State Big Time Wrestling from Steve Ricard. When the High Chief passed away in 1982, it was taken over by his widow, Leah Maivia, who ran the promotion until 1988, until allegations of extortion erupted between a rival promoter where old-school National Wrestling Alliance rules were tested in criminal court with both Leah Maivia and Lars Anderson on trial. This is the untold story of Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling. It was 1979, as Peter Jenkins was completing his walk across America, ending in Florence, Oregon. Sex Pistols frontman Sid Vicious overdoses on heroin, and due to his reputation, no New York funeral home was willing to hold any type of funeral or burial for him. English rock band Pink Floyd releases their 11th studio album entitled The Wall, which became the third highest selling album in the United States. Action thriller movie The Warriors hits the big screen, portraying gang life in New York, and despite being released to mixed reviews, becomes a cult classic. And High Chief Peter Maivia purchases what was left of 50th State Big Time Wrestling and the rights to the Hawaiian NWA territory from Steve Ricard and renamed it Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling. In 1979, while his heated feud with Bob Backlund was winding down, the High Chief negotiated the rights to promote wrestling under the NWA banner in the Hawaiian Islands. In that same year, Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling ran a syndicated show broadcasted on KGBM at 10 p.m. Friday nights and 2 p.m. Saturday afternoons, which also showed matches from other promotions, plus locker room interviews. Later, it was broadcasted on the Financial News Network, complete with the stock tickers running across the bottom of the screen, until the late 1980s, which was also home to California Championship Wrestling. Hawaii was a stop-off point for many wrestlers going to and from Japan and Australia. Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling got the very best from nearly every promotion in the U.S. It was not unusual to see a card with names like Dusty Rhodes, Kamala Mala, Giant David, Rick Martel, Giant Baba, and even Andre the Giant. On June 12, 1982, tragedy struck the Maivia family that would ripple through the Hawaiian Islands like an endless tropical summer storm. High Chief Peter Maivia lost his fight with cancer at the age of 45. His last wish was that his wife, Leah Maivia, continued on with the promotion and became one of the very few women promoters ever in the NWA. Vince McMahon referred to Peter Maivia as a wonderful, likable guy and a tough SOB you didn't want to mess with outside the ring. Peter Maivia's fast-paced in-ring style, along with being one of the most charismatic athletes of his time, the High Chief was a headliner anywhere he went. Peter Maivia was also the uncredited stunt coordinator for the blockbuster James Bond film, You Only Live Twice. But what High Chief Peter Maivia was credited with was being the first Polynesian professional wrestling promoter in Hawaii. He also established the Peter Maivia Wrestling School, and both his son Junior Maivia and his grandson Dwayne Johnson became second and third generation wrestlers respectively. Leah Maivia took over the promotion as well as ran annual tribute shows to the late Peter Maivia with help from Lars Anderson doing the booking, who also owned a piece of the office. And according to Dave Meltzer, he made himself the top single star for much of the period. Current resident stars of the time included Soul Man Rocky Johnson, the People's Choice Ricky Johnson, Samoan Joe, Lars Anderson, Ripper Collins, Lars Anderson, Siva Afi, Junior Maivia, Mark Lewin, Tom Donahoe's Time for Trivia, and also Lars Anderson. The High Chief Peter Maivia was a color commentator, and Lord James Blears as the announcer, joined by Sonny Ross, Ripper Collins, and Dunbar Wakayama, who would constantly talk about the Data Book, a book that supposedly had every piece of vital information about every wrestler, promotion, and arena in the world. Don Morocco, a Hawaii native who was adopted at birth, was an avid surfer and amateur wrestler, and originally introduced to the sport by Lord James Blears. He bounced around throughout several territories throughout the 1970s until he debuted in the World Wrestling Federation in 1981. Don would appear to the area during breaks from the WWF and Japan tours, appear in local shows just to help out the High Chief and the promotion in general. Although he was a heel all over the world, he was considered a fan favorite, even being cheered over Bob Backlund, who at the time of their match was the world champion. After retiring from the ring in 1995, Morocco returned to Hawaii. In 2003, he co-founded Hawaii Championship Wrestling with local TV producer Linda Babe, which ran from 2003 to 2008. He was a storyline commissioner of the promotion until 2006. In Aloha Stadium, Saturday, August 3, 1985, Leah Maivia and Lars Anderson presented the 1985 World Invitational Wrestling Spectacular Hot Summer Night, which featured 7 titles being defended from all 3 major wrestling organizations at the time, NWA, AWA, and the WWF, including NWA champion Ric Flair defending his title against hometown favorite Siva Afi. Polynesian Pacific Heavyweight Champion Bad News Allen faced Lars Anderson. Polynesian Pacific Tag Team Champions the Soul Patrol, Ricky and Rocky Johnson, faced the Dirty White Boys from Tennessee. In another tag team title match, world champions Nikita Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev met the American Dream Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA. The now defunct WWF Junior World Championship was defended when champion The Cobra faced Superfly Tui. NWA National Heavyweight Champion Blackheart defended his title against Manny Fernandez. AWA Lightweight World Champion Steve Regal faced the Mighty Milo. The card also included a $20,000 Battle Royal and the first ever women's street fight match with Debbie Combs going against the Fallen Angel. The show drew approximately 14,000 fans. Unfortunately, the sequel, Hot Summer Nights 2, the next year wasn't as successful. According to rumors, there were no shows up and down the card, loud booking arguments backstage that were heard by fans in the arena, and to top it off, it rained. The card drew less than 2,000 fans, which didn't even fill 5% of the 50,000-seat stadium. Dave Meltzer responded to a letter to the Observer about Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling, recalling PPW touring California in February of 1986, and said the shows were really not very good, with lots of no-shows. He also mentioned that the office was a bit heavy-handed when it came to keeping other promotions off the islands. No-shows during the California tour included The Sheik, Sam Anawai, Kevin Sullivan, Ron Slinker, Lady Maxine, and the People's Choice, Ricky Johnson. Leah Maivia had strong connections with New Japan Pro Wrestling and World Class Wrestling in Dallas, Texas. In the 1980s, she and Lars Anderson promoted shows at the NBC Arena and Aloha Stadium with stars such as Kevin Von Erich, Don Morocco, Jimmy Snuka, and Rocky Soulman Johnson. In the August 7, 1986 edition of the Honolulu Star Bulletin, writer Dave Reardon praised Leah Maivia for keeping wrestling alive in Hawaii. He also described the Maivias as indeed a wrestling family, as their daughter Atta married Rocky Johnson, who then had a son Dwayne, who Leah Maivia was quoted in the same article as saying he looked like he would follow in his father's footsteps. In 1988, Lars Anderson, Leah Maivia, and another partner were arrested and prosecuted for trying to shake down ex-Polynesian pro wrestling announcer turned independent promoter John Dunbar Wakayama who ran some cards in Hawaii in the latter part of 1988 using primarily mainland fly-in talent. The shakedown allegations included threats of violence, demands that the promoter rent their ring, book some of their talent, cut them in on the gate, and buy ad time on their TV shows, as well as $5,000 in tribute money. On Friday, October 13th of 1989, the trial was in full swing. As the story goes, Lars claimed he wasn't involved and his name was merely thrown into the mix by the third partner in order to intimidate Wakayama into paying the $5,000. Wakayama eventually ended up dropping a dime on everyone and calling the authorities. After a 7-week trial and 3 days of jury deliberation, Lars Anderson, Leah Maivia, and the third co-defendant were cleared on all charges. When Leah Maivia was interviewed by reporters and asked if there were any hard feelings towards Wakayama, she replied, "He's alright." Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling quietly faded away, and Leah Maivia faded from the limelight of promoter to running a handful of spot shows over the years under the Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling banner, as the WWF eventually started running regular shows in Hawaii. For years, the High Chief dreamed of selling out the saucer-like Honolulu International Center entirely, a feat his grandson Rocky Maivia would have a large part in doing while touring with the World Wrestling Federation and selling out the building in less than 4 hours. The NWA Polynesian Pacific Heavyweight title was the name of the championship defended in Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling. The first holder of the belt was Siva Afi, who won the title in a tournament and held it from June 25, 1980 until August of 1980 when he was defeated by Don Morocco. The last champion was Superfly Tui, who held the title until it was retired in 1988. Other notable champions included Jerry Lawler, Bad News Allen, Pat Patterson, and Ripper Collins. That was the untold story of Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling.